It's a pleasure for me to briefly introduce our keynote speaker. General Hoover has asked me, being the military man that he is, 38 years of service, my goodness. Because the operation requires that we get on with our business, he wants me to be very brief in my introduction, so I'm going to pass it directly to General Hoover.
Well, you're only clapping because you don't know me. There are some people here that I'm privileged to know, so you don't need to admit it. But I tell people I'm always better with strangers because people who know me don't like me. And I'm trying to find a location where you won't get the glare off the top of my head. I don't think I'm going to be successful. Well, I appreciate the opportunity. I'm going to share some foxhole perspectives with you, and hopefully my bluntness and my candor will be delivered and received in the respectful fashion that it is meant. So to shape my perspective, my grandfather left a small farming community in Illinois and went to World War I. My father left that same farm and went to World War II, flew P-38s in the Pacific. It was the Army Air Corps. Sometimes when I say this, where's General Schneider? When I say that around our Air Force officers, why they get all excited, and I go, stop. It was the Army Air Corps. You know, I won't say it still should have been, but okay. And so, my grandfather and my father, like men and women of their generation, they served. And they each served for 4 years, and they returned to the farm in Illinois and continued. In fact, my daddy at the University of Illinois got his master's degree in crop dusting. So he used his pilot skills to then make that application into the civilian community. And so when I joined the Army the 1st of July, 71 with a draft number of 3, it wasn't because I came from a military family, but that was the expectation. I entered West Point not to evade the draft, but I went to West Point not knowing what I was getting into, but recognized the sense of pride in my parents' eyes, and that was good enough for me. I was not a very stellar cadet. It was a long 4 years, but I appreciated that opportunity. And when I retired the 1st of September 2013, it was after the privilege to serve 38 years of my life on active duty, 14 of those 38 years as a general officer, and my last 2 years serving in command as a 3-star in combat in Afghanistan. So that's sort of what shapes how I view life. And so I'd like to offer some things for your consideration. And for example, I don't believe in a couple things. I don't believe in subject matter experts. I got my experiences, but I don't consider myself an expert in anything. I don't consider myself a hero, and I surely don't consider myself as broken. So when I run into well-intentioned people or organizations that have hero in their title, I don't want somebody to attempt to categorize me as a hero or as somebody who's broken. And when people go, gee, thank you for your service, I've been struggling with how I respond to that. And I think the way I'm going to start responding to that is, thank you for the opportunity to continue to serve. Because I think that's what we do more than any other group in our society. Once we remove the uniform, once we leave an organization, a military family where we have shared unconditional trust, where we have entered and learned to build and to lead teams and to share sacrifice and hardship and to train and to have a commonality and a focus of mission. And then you depart that. And you ask yourself the question whether you use your transition in an academic environment or not. The question I ask myself every day: what am I doing here? Do I belong here? How can I be successful here? How can I make a contribution here? Can I trust the people around me not to have some personal agenda or to criticize me when they don't have a clue? It's funny, I try not to be obnoxious, but sometimes when I brief presidents of academic institutions, well, I have people go, okay, you're going to brief the president. You know, let me tell you what he's like, and do you need somebody there? You know, God knows what they think a general does, but do you need somebody there? And, you know, I just want to bite my tongue and go, okay, let me play this for you. My last 2 years in Afghanistan, I had a $960 million budget. I worked for the chairman of the Joint Chiefs and the Secretary of Defense. I briefed presidents of nations on a weekly basis. I was responsible for tens of thousands of people's lives. I think I can handle briefing a university president. You know, and then I retire, and I stand before you today still deficient in the ability to load and unload the dishwasher. But I am trainable. You just have to be tenacious and persistent and speak slowly to me. So I don't believe in those categories. I think that we need, I really enjoyed the presentations, and Yvette, what you've done with Commissioner Grinder is worthy of recognition and emulation, so thank you for doing that. I look at things like green zone training. I think the concept is good. For me personally, I think the nomenclature is horrible. And I say that because to me, as an infantryman, special ops guy, the concept of a green zone doesn't exist. And for me, in my personal experience in Iraq and Afghanistan, I have been attacked. I have seen children, suicide bombers within green zones where people felt that they could then let their guard down. And so when you say green zone to me, it does not mean a safe haven. It brings back to me memories of horrible things with people, normally Department of State type people, who wanted some place where they could take off what they considered to be an oppressive weight of body armor, and so that they could relax. And they always looked at the military still in full gear. I never had anybody that I was associated with that when we were in combat, that we weren't prepared to perform our task and willing to give our lives for the men and women to our left and right. So the whole concept of a green zone to me doesn't exist, and I think it's misleading. However, I'm appreciative of any type of title or any type of mechanism that forces people to come together to learn something, because as Yvette said, you know, less than 1% of the American public has served in uniform. So, you know, we are the ultimate minority group. And so people don't know what to do with it. They don't have any inkling other than American sniper, lone survivor, Black Hawk Down, I went to Belmont to help him teach an international law class with the dean of the law school, former Attorney General Alberto Gonzalez, great guy. And one of the questions he asked me, he goes, okay, General, what movies are out there that you think accurately portray the horrors of combat? I said, well, I think Saving Private Ryan, probably, though my grandfather and my father never talked about World War I and World War II. Didn't ever say anything. I said, I think Private Ryan does, but then I think Black Hawk Down does, because to me, that's my reality. To me, Black Hawk Down clearly portrays in an accurate fashion the horror of close-in combat. And he goes, well, have you seen Lone Survivor or American Sniper? I said, no. And it took me 5 years after reading Black Hawk Down before I'd watch that movie, because all of the principal characters in there are either my personal friends or they worked for me. And so it was too real for me. I'm blessed to have a 33-year-old son and 3 grandsons. My son enlisted in the Army, didn't want to go to West Point, didn't want to be an officer, didn't want anybody to accuse him of receiving special treatment because his dad was a general, and I applaud him for that. He was a tanker though, so I feel that somehow I failed miserably. And in fact, he was at Fort Knox going through basic training when I was getting ready to go command U.S. forces in Kosovo. And anytime you deploy, you know that you don't want to focus on it, but anytime you deploy, you know that there's a possibility you won't come back. So I called the 2-star run in Fort Knox. I said, I'm getting ready to deploy. I want to come and see my son. He said, great. Of course, he didn't tell the drill sergeants that. And so I took my son out to lunch, and then he went back to basic training, and then the drills started calling him the general's daughter. And so I'm sure my son at that point in time said, thanks, Dad. You're really helping me out here. But he's 6'3" and 190, so I figured he'd sort it out. So how do you portray yourself within the academic environment? My first year of retirement was spent enjoying 4 major surgeries, which pretty much incapacitated me for a year. And it's amazing, all of you know this, whether you serve 4 years or you serve 40 years, regardless of your military occupational skill. I mean, it takes a toll on you physically. And I didn't realize the toll on me emotionally from my 2 years in Afghanistan. I came home 11 days the first year. The second year my mother died, so I came home for a couple days. But in that 2-year period, I was home less than 3 weeks to see my family. And I came home, and my wife has been through multiple combat tours with me. But when I came home from Afghanistan, she looked at me and she goes, Huber, I don't know who you are. And so, you want to say, I'm the same person who left, but you're not. And so people talk. I was glad to hear the comment about, as I talk to deans and presidents and professors, and they go, well, we're worried about PTSD. I say, okay, let's play that record. First of all, I don't think it should be referred to as a disease or a disorder. Secondly, if you limit your concern for the potential of workplace violence to men and women who have been willing to sacrifice everything to include their lives to defend this nation and protect our families, why, I think you need to open your aperture a little bit. And so combat changes everybody, regardless of where you were, or what your rank was, or what your duty position. It changes you. That doesn't mean that you're dysfunctional. It doesn't mean you're dangerous. It just means that you've been through a maturation process which could tend to make you less receptive towards others who don't view their academic endeavor as the next mission set. You know, there aren't any student veterans around to absorb the wonder of the college experience. They are there because this is the next duty. They are there to do the transition. They are there to try and receive a credential which will allow them to continue to provide for and protect their precious family as they did in uniform. So, how do we bridge this gap? And this morning I was learning by listening to some great questions of the panel and some great responses and trying to think my way through it, because I get asked a lot, you know, what can we do? And in fact, I'm at Middle Tennessee State University right now, though I help veterans around the world. Anybody want to call me, I don't care what the question is, I'm here to serve. And this allows me to feel like I'm making a contribution. This allows me to then give back. And I have the privilege to be associated with the VA at the federal level and the VA at the state level. And so if anybody that you know of is having a problem with benefits or health, and at the Tennessee level you want some additional assistance, I mean, please reach out and touch me, because the advantage to being at my level of seniority is most people will take your phone calls. And so it allows me to do what I think we all should do, to what all of us who have taken off a uniform seek to do, and that is to continue to serve. As I talk to employers as to why they should hire veterans. So how do you continue to serve in an environment where people don't know who you are, in an environment where we in the military clearly hold ourselves to a higher ethical standard than anybody we defend? And I'm okay with that. But it is a bit discouraging, and people ask me, what do I miss the most? And that's easy. I miss the most the men and women that I served with. And then the second thing I miss the most is being able to get stuff done. You know, I looked at, I mean, there's nothing neat about being a general officer, and please, all the others are really good, so don't think bad about Army generals based upon this interaction with me. I am a walking example that people get promoted out of curiosity, so if you ever wondered that, you can go, wow. I mean, there's somebody out there right now go, somebody check this guy's ID card. He can't be a 3-star. If he's a 3-star, I'll be a 5-star tomorrow. Okay, so all the others are really good. But the beauty about being a general officer is, as long as you're not worried about irritating people, which is probably never concerned me, so you can get stuff done. People will fix stuff because they can't ignore you. And as long as you're not concerned about that next star promotion, it's really neat. As long as you don't use your rank for your own personal benefit, for your own ego, you can really help people. And you've got the resources and the authority to do it. And so you know, transition is awful. And I don't think I'll ever transition out of when I see something that my parents' fingerprints on my heart and soul tells me is the wrong thing, and I can't fix it. That really is irritating. So, you know, now I'm an advisor to whoever is foolish enough to ask my opinion. And so the task is, how do you make it compelling that it's obvious? And so here I am in an academic environment. President McPhee of Middle Tennessee State University, when I went to speak, and it was funny because he asked me to spend 2 hours with his deans about how do you make a tough decision. Well, this is sort of neat. So I said, okay, what makes a decision tough? Is it you don't know anything about the subject that they're asking you to make a decision? Well, that's an easy fix. You can do your homework. Is it that it's a tough decision because you don't know what the right thing to do is? And I go, that's a lie. We all know what is right and what is wrong. We all know that. The real question that you're trying to avoid is, what are the consequences of me making this decision? Do you have the moral courage to do what your parents taught you was the right thing to do? And are you willing to hold yourself accountable and responsible? And if you've worn a uniform, that answer is yes, because you've brought up around that environment of accountability. But if you go into any organization, and academic is great, and you go, okay, what are you doing? Any organization that I've ever been a part of, I've walked in and I've gone, I want you to tell me what you do. So, all of them give me a list of stuff. I guess they're going, boy, if I show all this stuff I'm doing to him, he'll realize how invaluable I am, and he won't be dumb enough to fire me, because then who's going to do all this stuff? And so they show me this list of stuff they do, and I go, okay, why? Why do you do this stuff? And emotionally, it's a fascinating, almost always the first response is, well, the person I took over from did this stuff. So I know that they were smarter than I was, they just got promoted, and I don't want to criticize what they did, or I don't want to irritate the organization by making these changes. So my predecessor did it, I'm going to do it. And then the next response might be, well, I know something about that, and God knows I don't want to learn something new, so let me do something that I know something about. And I sort of like to do it, and work's supposed to be fun. I don't want to sacrifice. And oh, by the way, I got resources to do it. Why would I want to do anything that I got to ask somebody else for resources and then have my success hinge upon whether or not they're willing to give me resources? So this back room's full of bicycles. I sort of know how to ride one. It's sort of neat to feel the wind in my hair. And I got bicycles, so by golly, we're all going to learn how to ride bicycles. So just from an organizational perspective, if you look at why people do things, you probably won't find very often people going, we do it because it's the right thing to do. We do it because the world changes every day, and we've done an assessment of what we do during the day and what we were trying to accomplish, and are we accomplishing that? And if not, why don't we change? Change is an unnatural act. Most people, want to get in the seat. You're not sitting in the same seat you were before the break. So I want to get in the seat. I want to know where the coffee is. I want to figure out where the bathroom is. I want to get comfortable with life. And that's a limited way to experience life. And a lot of people think that Darwin's theory was survival of the fittest. I don't think that was his lesson. I think his lesson was those who adapt survive. So are you as an individual, or are you as an organization willing to take the effort every day to analyze what you're trying to accomplish and to recognize that the world has changed? I mean, my 2 years in Afghanistan, I was there long enough that I'd start to see people come back. And it was great because they were people that I had served with before, and I was honored to do that again. and I don't know if it was a good deal for them or not, but my concern was that they'd actually think that they knew something about Afghanistan. Well, I've been here before. Well, okay. But let me show you how the environment has changed. Another thing I don't agree with are best practices. I mean, that sort of fringes on the subject matter expertise, the arrogance of that from my foxhole. And the reason I don't is I prefer to call them promising practices. And I don't think that that's, being glib or obnoxious with Webster's words. But I think what best practices fail to take into account is the context, the circumstances. So what one institution, what one organization is doing, while it may be successful for them, that's based upon the weather, the moon phase, the leadership, the audience. I mean, I think that that's what we do in the military so well, is we realize that the environment, the context impacts the effectiveness. That's why when you threw this up and go, gee, what helps you from the military, what hurts you from the military? Absolutely. The ability to time manage, the ability of organization, the ability of a commonality of purpose, the mutual trust and respect that you've got to earn every day by your actions. What hurts you? I'm not sure if anything hurts you. I mean, I got people who come to me, General, what do you know about leadership? You're a general. You got tens of thousands of people that are just waiting for you to go, gee, I'm thinking about a glass of water. And then all of a sudden it's like a zillion people run out with water. 1 or 2 cubes of ice, frosted or unfrosted glass, straw. I mean, it's amazing what people think generals do or don't do. You don't know anything about leadership. You just order people to do stuff. And to me, you've just lost what I consider to be the essence of leadership, particularly in combat, when life becomes so much easier. Because you either live or die. Worse yet, you ask people, you don't order them, you ask people to do things that you look them in the eye and you know the risk that they won't survive it. And they go, we got it, sir. And you want to go with them. And a lot of times you can't go with them. And nothing more humbling than to have somebody willingly do what you've asked them to do and die doing it. But to me, the essence of leadership is the recognition that people allow you to be their leader. They give you the privilege of leading them, that they willingly follow you at times to their death. Not based upon your physical size or your gender or your race or your religion or even your rank or your duty position. You can't order people to follow you in combat. But that they willingly follow you out of a sense of mutual respect and love that you got to earn every day. So what traits do we have as veterans? And oh, by the way, the definition of a veteran. You enter the armed forces of the United States of America, you complete basic training. Period. Now, the level of benefits that you earn are then determined by your length of service, the component of service, combat experience, service-connected injuries. But it's amazing, as we stated this morning, how few people even understand what a bloody veteran is, and that includes people who've worn the uniform. Last October, I went to my 40th reunion of West Point, my class of 75. And I'm sitting across the table from a classmate of mine who spent 30 years in the regular Army as an infantryman. And I go, gee, Steve, how long did it take for your compensation and pension paperwork to go through the VA? Mine took 14 months. And I could tell by his body language, he didn't have a clue what I was talking about. He goes, well, I never went to Iraq or Afghanistan. I didn't burn that. Here's a gentleman who spent 30 years on active duty doing whatever the Army asked him to do, and he still had this misperception that, gee, I'm not a veteran because I'm not a combat veteran. And it's frightening. And that's the contribution I try to make, is to make people aware of the benefits they've earned. Give them access to those benefits. And then if they run into obstacles, allow me the privilege to serve you and figure it out. And do that in conjunction with the state and at the federal levels. So the academic environment. At Middle Tennessee State University, there's 1,014 student veterans currently enrolled out of a student population of about 22,700. Average age, 28.6 years, 95% of them are receiving post 9/11 education benefits, which translates into they've got at least one, but probably multiple combat tours in Iraq or Afghanistan. And so that shapes their maturation. A lot of them walk around with full beards, and I always go up to them and envy people who can grow hair. Okay, so I go up and envy with them, and I go, why are you wearing that? Looks good, but why are you wearing that? They go, well, General, I don't want anybody to pick me out as a veteran. And as we said, I mean, for fellow veterans, why, not only can we pick you out, but we probably can figure out which service you were in. And so I asked that question, why? And they go, well, we don't know how people will receive us. We don't know what they think about us. We don't want somebody coming up going, okay, how many tours in Iraq or Afghanistan did you have? Gee, were you a sniper? How many people did you kill? I mean, at times I'll take people through that experience of losing part of your soul, taking another person's life in defense of your nation, but you don't talk about that stuff. And so how do you find yourself another family of those who have worn a uniform? Because our families are our heroes. They continue on with the normalcy, if anything exists of normalcy, with the challenges of regular life, of our spouses being both mother and father, of our children growing up without their parents, of the stress. I mean, my wife told me my first year in Afghanistan, she said, I didn't sleep at all. Because she kept going, what am I going to do? What's he doing? Is he going to be dead tomorrow? How am I going to do this? What am I going to tell his son? How am I going to raise our daughter? And then she said, it exhausted me so much the second year, I just said, screw it. I said, well, thanks. We don't need to share this much, darling. This is wonderful. I'm glad we got this open relationship. She just goes, you're well trained. You know what you're doing. It's God's will. But you look at our precious family members and what they endure to allow us to continue to wear a uniform and to serve our nation. And so you come home to your family and the reintegration is god-awful. And we were talking about the different services. As a commander of a combined joint interagency task force in Afghanistan, it would drive me nuts because each of the services would have a different deployment length. And nothing more disruptive to your organization that once you got people there that you're comfortable with, that they understand what they're doing, next thing you know, they're gone. So you got one service that is there for 3 or 4 months, you got another that's there for 6 months, you got one that 8, 9 months, another 10, 12, 14 months, and I went through 3 sec defs during my 2 years in Afghanistan, and I brought it up to each of them. I said, Mr. Secretary, will you please standardize what is a tour length for the services? Because it makes us less combat effective. He goes, no. I go, okay, why? He goes, because that's a recruitment tool for the services. And we're not going to tell the services when to send their people. So that disruptive nature, and then you come back home, and particularly if you're in that age group of 25 to 35, you've spent in uniform 4, 6, 10 years, you come home to a family that you've only interacted with during breaks in between combat deployments. You got 2 or 3 children under the age of 10 who don't know you and you don't know them. You come back with the trauma of combat. Once again, it doesn't break you, it doesn't make you dysfunctional, it doesn't make you dangerous, but it makes you different. Because of the toll on your body, you're taking authorized prescription drugs. Because of memories of people that you've lost or lives that you've taken, those don't go away. I'd be concerned about anybody who said they went away, because mine haven't gone away. And you come back to a home and now you try to reintegrate yourself. I mean, my wife homeschools our precious 9-year-old daughter. And so I'm back and I'm going, gee, I know some stuff. Can I get in here? She said, stay away. Go away. We don't want you to interfere. We got a good routine. But so you can't, the challenges of reintegrating into your own family, and then if you use the academic opportunity that you have earned to then transition, where do you find that family on the academic campus? And that's why, to me, I told you, I can't make anything happen anymore. So my compelling argument to President McPhee was, okay, let me understand the context. So gee, I'll do something devious, like I'll start out with the American Council of Education. And what does this critter say is good for student veterans? And they got a real good 8-point. So I mean, that's what I hit President McPhee with. Was, okay, your context, your environment is academia. So let me tell you what the academics say that you need to be successful. Because his point was, when he met me, he goes, I want to hire you because I want to take how we treat our veterans to the next level. And I went, no. And like most people, when you get that answer that you don't expect or you don't like, what's your reaction? It's like, well, this guy may be a general, but he ain't too bright. He obviously didn't understand what I said, so let me say it slower and louder. General, I want to hire you. No. And finally asked why. I said, because you don't know what you want me to do. And I'm not going to be the token 3-star that you hire to show your veterans that, golly, I love you so much, I've hired this guy. I mean, once he gets to know me, you know what a curse that was. I'm going to burden you with this Huber guy. So I said, okay, I'll do a 60-day assessment to tell you who your student veterans are and, more importantly, what they expect. But within that Academic Council of Education, the American Council of Education, it talks about a specific space for veterans. And most academic institutions correlate that to a lounge or a social space. And that social space is important, some place that between classes, some place they can come and be there with fellow veterans and feel comfortable sitting down and relaxing or using a computer or watching a TV or having a conversation without feeling like they're being interrogated. But there's so much more to that. And so President McPhee gave me 2,600 square feet and $329,000 to design, build, and equip a student, veterans, and military family center, which is, as I traveled to Arizona State University to look at the Pat Tillman Center. I went to San Diego State University. I looked at other locations to try and determine how I would frame my request. and to see what was possible. So that was in April of 15, and November of 15 we dedicated the Veterans and Military Family Center with Commissioner Grinder there, and Max Haston there, and Charlie Daniels there, the Deputy Secretary of the VA, Sloan Gibson. And it is the largest and the most comprehensive in the state of Tennessee, and it's more comprehensive than anything I've seen nationwide, from the standpoint that it has 2 VA full-time employees there, one of them being Vet Success on campus, the other being a full-time mental health counselor. And so we're the only center in the nation that has a VA mental health counselor in the center, and it was done as a pilot program. I think it's the right thing to do. And part of my task is to convince the VA Secretary McDonald that that's the right thing to do. But it's an interesting approach. And then we've got 4 full-time university employees there. But the most important part is we've got other student veterans there who are currently students there, who are on the work program that the VA pays. And so they're the people that you have a commonality with and you have a trust with, that you can ask them any question you want and know that their only agenda is to watch your back. And they don't have any agenda, they won't criticize you, they won't think less of you, because we as veterans have a hard time asking for help. And the combat experience has not assisted us in asking for help, because what do? You earmark everything from the last traumatic experience you had. Gee, I didn't do too well in that exam, but at least nobody was shooting at me. God, I hate being stuck in traffic, but I don't have to worry about an improvised explosive device at the next corner. And so you go, gee, if I could have lived through that, I can do anything. And so you hesitate to ask for help. And particularly if you're not amongst people that share that commonality. So having other student veterans there who are familiar with the procedures within the academic institution, that you can walk in there. So, I mean, you can call, you can go on the website for the Veterans and Military Family Center at Middle Tennessee. You don't have to be a student there. Our intent is, you got a question, you ask it. And if you walk into the center, we're not going to go, the answer to your question is down the road. Or why don't you call this central appointment number? And if you do, call after duty hours, because then they'll call you back and you won't be on 2-hour hold to get an answer. Whether it's health, whether it's education, whether it's employment, this is what you need. This is what, to me, a Veterans Center needs. It needs to be holistic in its approach to the questions that will be asked. And the only people who can assist the academic institution in the anticipation of the questions are the student veterans. Because if you're worried about something else, daycare, hospital appointments, employment, resume writing, if you're worried about that, you're not focused on your task at hand, which is to achieve that academic excellence, and then to use that academic degree, which hopefully you've thought about as to, I want to do this, where's it going to lead me? You know, when I talk to employers about why they lose veterans, I go, you got to understand what a veteran walks into. Walks into a unit, trains and qualifies for the privilege to belong to that unit, and then can sit down with their next leader and get laid out to them, okay, based upon your time in service, and holding these certain duty positions and going to these certain military skills, here's when you are going to be promoted. And there is a path for an organized progression to duties of higher responsibility. A veteran does not want to be stagnant. They want to understand how they can continue to assume more responsibility. And they're accustomed to being in organizations that in an organized fashion prepares you to do that. So if you join an employer and he can't tell you and doesn't have any plan, why, you're going to lose that veteran. I get employers who go, I hired a veteran to do this job because they didn't have any experience in the business. But when I saw their work ethic and their leadership, I immediately made them a supervisor. So the employment opportunities, the education of employers as to what a veteran brings, and all the money that people have spent on software trying to translate military skills into civilian resumes, in my mind, is a waste of time and effort. Because you'll never get any one of us who has worn a uniform to describe to you what we have done, other than to say, we were honored to serve our nation. I mean, you can start squeezing me and I might go, you know, General, what'd you do in the Army? Whatever I was asked to do, the best of my limited ability. Oh, well, that doesn't, what'd you do? I bet you've done some really neat stuff. I have, thank you. You know, but when you get on that resume, gee, I was a truck platoon leader, only another veteran sitting there with that HR selection committee can go, okay, let me tell you what that means. Let me tell you how many trucks, let me tell you how many people, let me tell you the budget they managed, let me tell you the training program they planned and implemented, let me tell you about the leadership, let me tell you about taking care of family members for our fallen. I mean, there's no way that you can fit that on a form. So somehow we've got to get the employers to the first interview with the veteran. And an easy way to do that is to find veteran-owned businesses. Easy way to do that is to try and get veterans in the organization. I mean, HCA, Hospital Corporation of America, has a VP specifically for military recruitment. A gentleman by the name of Avery King. And he came, we sat down and talked and had a meeting. He's got 3,000 vacancies this year to hire veterans. So, I mean, there are large corporations out there who recognize the leadership and the quality of hiring veterans. But our task in the academic environment is twofold for the student veteran organizations. First of all, you got to decide what you want to do. Are you going to teach people to ride bicycles because you got the resources? What you got to decide to do is, one, are you going to focus internally? At the very least, you should form a network, a functioning cell with a location to meet so that you can serve your other fellow student veterans. And as I look across the state, I don't see a lot of those organized. So at the very least, that's what a student veteran organization should do. It should know who the student veterans of the institution are and find a way to communicate with them, and when they need help, offer it to them and have a mechanism. And it's got to be more than the institution's certifying officer. God bless the certifying officer to make sure the academics are right and they're being transmitted to the VA, but that's the academic institution's business to get paid from the VA. And I don't say that in a derogatory sense, but it's got to be so much more than that because the student veteran has so many other issues. So if you walk into your veterans center and somebody goes, I need help with the VA hospital, and if you got to give them the call center phone number, you're a no-go from My Foxhole. You've got to anticipate. So the student veteran organization has got to help the academic institution to understand what is important in setting the conditions for success. I mean, that's what we do as leaders. We take a group of diverse human beings with different education, with different backgrounds, with different cultural perspectives, and we set the conditions so that every one of them can make a contribution to a successful team effort. There's nobody in this room who got up this morning and said, let me go into the conference and convince everybody that I'm a selfish idiot. Everybody wants to be value added. So the trick is, how do you empower them? How do you set the conditions? How do you anticipate their needs and have a solution set there? So, student veterans, whatever organization you have on whatever campus, your first should be internal to serve the student veterans. Then you got the problem of, how do you influence the academic leadership? I mean, we made mention of Governor Haslam's $1 million grant last year. 11 academic institutions got that. I tell some of those leaders that I don't believe their level of commitment. And the reason I say that is because they waited until they got a grant. So if your measure of success as an organization is, I applied for a grant, I got a grant, gee, I'm a good grant writer, and boy, I brought money into the university or the college. Hooray! Oh, wait a minute, this grant has to do with veterans. Okay, so now I got to do something with veterans because I got to report how I'm using the money for the grant. And that to me is not commitment. If you're not doing an assessment of what's important and what's the right thing to do, and then you're willing to establish priorities and attach resources to those priorities, if you're waiting on somebody else to help you do the right thing because you're unwilling to do it, you aren't committed from this infantryman's foxhole. And that saddens me. Because this is what our veterans have earned, is a level of commitment from the community and the nation that they have been committed to and willing to die for. That is a mutual respect concept that far exceeds student enrollment or grant writing or publicity. That's what we seek, is that level of commitment by the community that we have served. So I think it's a very tall task to be able to influence either the lawmakers at the state level, Commissioner Grinder and her assistant commissioner Martinez do a superb representation and influence of that. But within each academic institution, how do you convince the leadership to do that unnatural act of change? And particularly when that change is associated with terrain management, which I'm learning, gee, there's all the sacred ground on every academic institution. Gee, we can't make room for anybody else. We don't have room for anybody else. And then to attach money to it. And then to make it into a self-sustaining. So I think I'll stop there and take your questions. I appreciate your patience. I gotta end with a light note because people erroneously accuse me of being intense at times. I get excited. Must be post-traumatic something. So I was having a bad day in Afghanistan and being devious why I was convinced I needed somebody to pat me on the back and appreciate me. So I created this plot. I was going to ask Sergeant First Class Lisa Swanson, one of my great non-commissioned officers, I was going to ask her how many generals in the U.S. Army. And by law, why there's 311 of us. And by law, more than 50% are 1 stars. And then on any given day, you got 125, 132 stars, 35, 45 3 stars, 7 or 8 4 stars. So I was going to ask her this question, and I was convinced that she would give it a great deal of thought and then come back and go, 1,100. And then I was going to be able to go, no! There's only 311 of us. We work really hard. You should appreciate us more. So this was my plot. So I asked her, Sergeant First Class Swanson, how many generals in the U.S. Army? And her response was immediate. Too many. And I went, wow, what a great answer. What a lesson in humility. And so, the 38 years I was privileged to serve on active duty, that was what kept me awake at night. Was that, would I reach the point, physically or mentally, where I was unworthy to serve my men and women? Where all of a sudden, in their mind, I became one of those too many generals. And I think that's a human concept that we all can reflect upon. That nobody wants to be known as one of those too many, that all of us want to be valued for our opinion, for our actions, that we all want to make a contribution to something that is larger than our own egos. And so I'm very appreciative, Ted. I know I won't get invited back, but thank you for this opportunity to share some perspectives with you, recognizing that your approach to life and to problem solving, your circumstances may not be, these may not be worthy of your reflection or consideration, but I appreciate the opportunity to be associated with you. Thank you.